Good morning, everyone. My name is Edward Millington from CarrySat Global, the Managing Director, also the Principal Security Consultant and the Senior Lead Risk Manager in ISO 27005, which deals with risks in the information security domain. Today, we have Mr. Kevin Bailey. He is from Cybrilliance and has an extensive background in this area of discussion. He would have worked at a number of storage companies, etc., like Storage Tech and Symantec, etc., and have done quite a bit of research as a director on the EMA of security software. He's an active STEM ambassador, Team Tech advisor, and contribute to the UK government all-party parliamentary group for blockchain and artificial intelligence. He holds a post-diploma in marketing and a master's in marketing distinction. He's also a member of the Charter Institute of Marketing. So Kevin, welcome today, and it is nice to have you on. We can call it part 2 of the series, because we had a wonderful webinar a few weeks ago, and I think that has led on into this webinar we have today. So again, welcome, and you may proceed.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. I think it's good morning to everyone, apart from me, which is good afternoon. As you can probably guess from myself, I'm dialing in today from the UK. So I manage the EMEA geography for Cybrilliance, and also responsible for the go-to-market strategy for Cybrilliance globally. And today, as Edward has says, this is the second of our webinars that I've been lucky to do to your region. And today we have this session covering data risk management. And tomorrow we are doing one around data security platforms. So yeah, if you're signed up for that, great. If you've got other colleagues that want to come in, then please invite them to come along as well. It'll be a very good session. What we're going to be doing today over this period is discussing the different elements that we are seeing today in the environment around cyber resistance and data resilience as well. There's a lot of, as you would expect, discussions around cybersecurity and cybersecurity tools. But when you actually look at everything and you work to the prescriptive view of either cyber attackers or incidents in the business, it comes down to the data. And the data is the thing that people are after. People are growing in businesses. Whatever the industry is you're working to, your business is built on data, which means without that data, you don't have a business. And what we want to do through this session is discuss with you how things have moved on from the era where traditional data resilience was a reliance on backup systems and recovering from those backup systems. And as Edward has said, in my past, I worked 12 years or more at Symantec when they owned Veritas. So I know that very well. And also the storage technology products that have been put in place to hold that data. And again, for my sins, I was one of the team that introduced the first ever 5x4x1 cartridge, the square cartridge that went into robots. And I did that in Storage Tech when I lived in Colorado. So data is something that I've lived and worked for nearly 40 years, either as a user all the way through to storage companies, security companies, and that's dealing in different aspects of how you maintain privacy of that data, security of the data, and protect it, whether it's in its basic form or all the way through to new technologies that are being tried and tested today around things like blockchain, for instance. When we come down to it, we have to think about the things that are happening today in our environments. And, we will go through each of these areas. And something that I do, and my CEO at Cybrilliance knows, is, to me, the devil is always in the detail. So it's always about the detail. It's the small things that matter. And those small things are the things that can cause the problems later. So before we move on and I start talking more about things, we've got some initial questions that I know Edward has put together. And we ask if you could answer these and go through each of these areas to give an idea and an understanding of exactly what you believe is your current situation that you have. So, if you could answer these, then, it gives us a base to move forward to going forwards. So let me give you a little time. It's totally anonymous. I don't know who's answered what that is been put into place, but like I say, if you could answer these 3 questions, then we have an understanding of exactly what your baseline is at the moment. Oh. Edward, I think you're on mute at the moment. I can see you.
Yes, that is correct. I will say that we have 3 questions today, and the first one is, do you understand the effects that a cyber attack has on your organization? And this is something that is a very valid question, because as we continue to see every single day breaches, cyber attacks, business email compromises, phishing attacks, ransomware is very important. Second question, what do you use to protect your organization from cyber incidences that are attempting to compromise your data? And the last but not least is cybersecurity advisory key in your cybersecurity strategy? Very important as we continue to fight a battle that is ever evolving, and we all know we cannot remain stagnant. So I believe I have, I'm just going to let it run for a few more seconds, and then we're going to close the poll.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
There you go. You can share that results with everyone.
Good. Well, it's excellent that people here believe that you do understand the effects of a cyber attack has on your organization. Those are the things that we expect people to say. And hopefully what we're going to do as we go through this is raise some more issues that you may not have understood fully. And somewhat, again, I mentioned that, I've been in this industry nearly 40 years and working as, an operator all the way through vendors. I never stop learning, and people should always understand that. So if somebody says, I know everything, there's always something new to learn that is there. There's a good mixture, as you would expect. And you'll see a lot of these in the presentation as we go through these, around areas such as firewalls, the perimeter boundaries, the communication systems around email, awareness training, which is coming up a lot in your geography around North America. There is a lot of emphasis around cyber training now. New NIS2 protocol that is coming from Europe, from the European Union, that complements the NIST strategy, talks about cyber awareness within there. a strong business enabling ransomware policy. That's an interesting one that we have won. So the two areas that I expected to be won is strong business enable ransomware policy and active and cyber resilience backup program. Those are we're going to focus on. 2001 should be in place if you require it, and other standards that you have in place. And it's good to see that people are thinking about cyber advisory. Having a second set of eyes on things always helps. It's that ability for advisors, and many organizations have this, where they have advisors coming in to help them and to probe questions and pose questions to them about some of the areas they may not have thought. And through this session, I'll discuss some of the incidents and activities that I see and talk to, whether it's CIOs, CISOs, head of security, head of IT, all the way through, that says, it's useful to have somebody where they've got that second set of eyes on your business.
Kevin?
Yes.
I want to add something very briefly, since we're here with the initial questions. We now have Amelia, she's on board. Amelia, thank you. Welcome to the webinar. I just wanted to add that, as you can see here, and we briefly chat online, and myself and Gordon from Brilliant, is that when you look at some of the results, especially from question 2, when you reach this stage, it means that all necessary defenses that have been put in place has been circumvented, and we're at the level now of the endpoint, in this particular case, endpoint being involved now in the incident. So going through here, we see comprehensive monitoring and logging, they're at 0%. The active backup is pretty small, so that's good. We can work with that. But as you can see, some of the areas that are very critical in detecting before we get to this stage, and hence the reason why incident management, one could possibly say we're at this point right now. So Kevin, you can proceed. Just wanted to bring that there into topic.
No problem at all. And all the way through this session, I'm rather than using a Cybrilliance view about things, or my own view, or Edward's view, I'm actually going to relate everything I do to a NIST framework, because they're a recognized body. They're not like an analyst group or a vendor, which is focused primarily on promoting products. The NIST solutions that are in place, and the same from the EU, are about giving you good frameworks to work from. But I'm going to find holes in them based on what you're going to experience today. So, can I get them changed at NIST? No. Can you? Yes. But it is these sort of things that we want people to deal with. If you look at a traditional architecture, looking around data resilience and the cybersecurity market, it's broken into two areas, which is the detection, mitigation, and response. You hear it today with endpoint detection response products, NDR products, threat intelligence products, and such like. And then separately, you have the rebuild, recover, and continuity, which is the backup and recovery market. This is your traditional Continuum, Veritas, VEEAM, Commvault environments that exist there. Doesn't matter whether it's on-premise, in the cloud, in your garage, the architecture of that has a purpose to provide. And if you look at the NIST framework for this category, it covers what we would determine as the rebuild, recover, and continuity areas. So it's about malware cleansing, having the 3 copies. They talk about 3-2-1, which everybody should understand. 3 copies of the data. You have an immediate copy accessible, normally on site, a second copy in a secondary location, and another copy on a different medium type. That could be tape. Tape is not dead, it's still got life, or it could be immutable storage, disk storage. But what you're getting from that last version is it cannot be tampered with, but it tends to be off-site or connected to a network connection at a secondary location, so you can bring those in. If you look at the NIST framework subcategory, these are the things that NIST says that you must do to maintain your ability to recover. You've got to identify all the files to be backed up. You've got to determine restoration time. So how quickly can I get it back? At what point do I want to get that data back? I've also got to understand the relationships among systems. You cannot bring data back if some other systems are not in place. So you've got to understand what your policy is and what the priority is of bringing different systems back. So you've got to make sure, as we said, that backups and information is secured off-site, either air-gapped or connected or using a third party, for instance, either a cloud or someone like Iron Mountain and such like. Also, what is your technical approach to generate backups? So, are you going to run dailies, weeklies, monthlies, quarterlies, yearlies? Are you going to run fulls, incrementals, differentials that exist in there? Everything's different that you have. And also, and the big thing that's grown, obviously, since the pandemic is workplace relocation options. That's not just the fact that people tend to work from home more, it's the fact that people tend to use satellite offices more than HQ. And they may only be in there 1 or 2 days a week, and there's different people that are there. So you've got to make sure that you have these in place. Plus, you cannot just rely on one backup file, and I'll show you why. You've got to develop the response and recovery processes for, in the NIST arena, it is for operational resilience. That is the way they talk about this. The other thing is regulatory and legal data retention. I know that we have financial industry on this call, but if you have medical industry that is there, you have a need to contain and retain data for a period of time because it relates to a regulation that you have. Doesn't matter about your recovery. This is saying that you, by law, have to keep this data on top of what you've got to keep for operational resilience. And the final piece they talk about is test the plan for recovery. That is the most, probably objective thing that they talk about here, but it is so wide in its meaning, and people do not understand that last piece about testing the planning for recovery. And you'll hear me talk about stuff saying, if you've got to make sure that your environment can recover from all situations, don't just think about normal operational instances that this has got to happen. This is what NIST calls a standard infrastructure diagram. And what it does, it talks about, on the bottom left-hand side, all of the different areas that you should consider being put into place for the different areas that your business may have. So encryption is there, automated backups. Automated backups is a bit of a misnomer. So it's assuming that it just fires off itself, but somebody's got to set it up in the first place. Cloud backups, the write once, read many drive, the immutable drive. So tape doesn't fit into VEEAM, in its standard form. Believe it or not, 20 years ago, Storage Tech, when I worked there, we tried to bring a worm tape device out, but for some reason it didn't work out commercially. But a worm drive, in this case, they are talking about immutable disk storage that you have, and also removable media drives, not just USBs, but also devices that you can mount and dismount from systems that are in place, and where that fits across this architecture. So when you have that, it gives you somewhere to start from. So coming back to the attendees again, to you, I'd like you to answer these three questions. So if you don't know directly, think about it. So how long do you think it takes to recover an endpoint back into your business again? How long do you think it takes to recover a server back into production? Same thing. And how long do you reckon it takes to recover at least 1 terabyte of digital data assets? That's a terabyte of data. And if you come on to tomorrow's session, we're going to talk all about terabytes and petabytes and exabytes of data.
Okay, we can allow the session to continue to run. But what we're looking at is how long does it take to recover an endpoint back into business? Very, very critical.
Yeah.
How long does it take to recover a server back into production? Even more critical, because as we know, many services are connected to, regardless if it's on the external side from off the internet to internal. Server do provide many services as one would expect. And last but not least, how long does it take to recover at least 1 terabyte of digital data asset?
Yep.
This can include having access, searching, and then being able to deliver that data asset to your location. So regardless of if that's on the internet, if you're like, I believe it's Minnesota, Minneapolis, I can't remember which one health system, their systems are offline. It means then to transfer that 1 terabyte, it means putting it on a storage drive, bring it to a location, transferring it, whatever that process is. So if you have not tested that scenario, you might try to put it on a very slow drive to bring it back in the system and to transfer it. So all this is taken into consideration. All right, I'm going to end the poll right now.
Okay.
Okay, here's the results.
So how long to take an endpoint back into business? Less than 30 minutes, 2 people do. Less than 3 hours, greater than 3 hours. I'm going to come back to each of these, because I'm interested in this. How long to recover a server back into production? Again, the same types of splits that we have here. And how long does it take to recover at least 1 terabyte of digital data assets? What I'm pleased about, and I'm going to work from backwards to the front, assuming you have no bottlenecks, and let's say you have a backup of 1 terabyte of data in the cloud, or it is on site and you've got to run it through an internal network to either a workstation or to a server, it will take you a minimum of 2.5 hours. You cannot do it any faster unless you're using some sort of flash, and you literally move one cable over to another that is in place. The average for this is 2.5 hours. Every time that we sit this poll, that bottom one of greater than an hour, a lot of people sit around 3 hours from it. What I've said on that is no bottlenecks. So you're assuming that the target device you are going to is available to recover it. Servers here, same thing. Because of the work that we do, I spend a lot of time looking around things like Windows Server, whether it's 2018 or the 2022 version. And to recover the server back means that you are bringing the operating system back, then the applications, and then the data. The bottom one, you might be able to do it in around 3 hours in traditional forms. And then the bottom one's the one where it fits. And this is looking at averages across different systems. So, yeah, somebody may say, yeah, but I can get a server back in an hour because I'm doing this and this. That's great. It's still in an operational environment. There are no bottlenecks. And the endpoint one that we have here, yeah, rebooting a Mac, a Windows PC, for instance, and bringing that back into play, assuming you're just doing a reload of the image and bringing the data back, you could probably sit somewhere around about the 3 hour mark, you know, and that's for one endpoint. This is not talking about if you've got 100, bringing them all back, so, because you're doing things sequentially in its process because of the way that the networks work.
Kevin?
Yes, mate.
Question here that I think will extend to what I'm going to ask to. How is the recovery influenced if the server is substantially on-premise or in the cloud? The recovery time, yeah.
It's not actually. The main two differences is who's managing that server for you. If it's in the cloud, you could be being provided as a service from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, whoever the MSP that you've got, or MSSP, and that's part of your service level agreements to bring that back into place. So and again, you have to look at it where it's microservice versus a service. Microservice is saying I'm taking a segment of a server with some microservice applications, and I've got to bring it back. If that has been affected, then anybody else using that service is affected as well, because you're sharing that with somebody else, which means they've got to bring it all back. The alternative version through the cloud is you ask the cloud provider to provision you with a server that you've got access to the operating system, and you determine what goes on there, but you're managing it yourself. So it's a bit like doing it on premise. In those environments, the two key factors on that is network throttle, capability. Are you working through a network connection to a cloud service that is hosted wherever around the world in one of the super data centers, or are you working a local network into your servers that you can bring that data back? So the operation's the same. The key part is the individual managing it and the network connectivity that you've got. So we're assuming with all of this, everything's free, i.e. there is no bottlenecks. Yeah.
I think one of the main questions that we should have asked here is, have anyone ever experienced a total, like what is happening right now, where you have to disconnect the whole network, all machines are offline, and after so you have to get this back onto the machine, you have to verify it. I don't see it to be around 3 hours, or less than 3 hours. No. It's going to take some level of time. But once you have that first verification that backup is safe, then you're going to start the rollout procedure on other systems and so forth. So in time of a real disaster incident, where it's a massive ransomware attack and networks are taken offline, any form of of anything propagating within the network, within boundaries from one section department to the next, from one site to the next. As Kevin would have mentioned, that throttling is really a disconnect procedure, etc. So Kevin, go ahead. I don't want to delay it too much.
No problem. And yeah, everyone, please ask questions as we go along. This isn't just for me to talk. It is for you to challenge what I'm saying. And those points that Edward raised, I'm going to bring those to the forefront with real examples of what actually does happen. So as we move forwards, and I'm just getting my clicker, you'll hear me say this a lot of times. Anybody who ever sees any content from me says,
"Run out of napkins. I have to bring you napkins."
Okay. Being ready is not being prepared. So, and I'm not going to point the fingers at anybody, but being told that your disk subsystem can run this fast, my backup service can run this fast, I can back up this amount of data this quickly. Remember, backup and recovery, you pay for backup, you don't pay for recovery. And that's an interesting part. So being ready, having everything in place, is not being prepared. Approaching things on the NIST framework as it is today is not being prepared. That gets you ready, but it doesn't get you ready and prepared for the incidents that are happening every day at the moment. The whole thing around data resilience, and as we have it around backup recovery program objectives, is two things. That's all they're there for, is the ability to have a recovery point objective. I would like to go back an hour and bring the systems to here. I would like to go back a day, a week, a month, a year, to be able to have that recovery point objective. And then the second one, which is key, is the recovery time. How quickly can you get me to that point and make sure that I am now operational or ready to be operational? Because in many scenarios, it's not just the backup that is happening. There's lots of other things, but you want to make sure that you have that ability for data resilience in place. So the thing that you do with this, and it comes back to that final point on the NIST area, which is about testing. And I have it as testing and monitoring. Yeah, when you have this, you must be able to both test manually and automated response and recovery processes, procedures and technologies, so that your standard TTPs, and they must be done to check file backup integrity. This is not just I backed it up, but are those backups good? Because in a lot of incidents, when people go to recover the data, the backup is not good. It hasn't been collected correctly. It may not be the backup program's problem. It may be the media that is going on that has caused the issue. So you've got to make sure it's there. The other part of file backup integrity is there is no malware inside that. That's why you have these, a lot of backup providers now provide you this integrity of making sure the malware, the backups are clean from malware when they are being backed up. Then you've got to make sure that you have effectiveness and efficiency of recovery process and procedures. So those two pieces of effectiveness and efficiency are key to all of this, and I'll come back to those. As with everything, and as I said, I never stop learning. You develop lessons learned. Yeah, you've got lessons you've learned from tests that may include things like, how long is it time to retrieve my files? Yeah, so this is the recovery time objective that you have, whether it, as Edward said just now, it's in the cloud, it's in the data center, it's a third-party site. How long does it take me to get those back, i.e. not just physically back, but back into the system? Then whether the retrieval time is directly related to file sizes. It's interesting because when you look at structured and unstructured data today, unstructured data is in the kilobytes and structured data now sits in terabytes and will go to exabytes. So the files are getting bigger. Just because we can store more, do I want it all coming back? And how quickly will it take me to get that data back? Again, I'm not too worried about somebody saying from a backup provider, I can back up this data this quick. What I'm interested in, how quickly can he get it back? Because in most cases, it takes twice as long to bring the data back than it does to back it up. Then you look at the time to restore the files to systems. Remember, back in recovering data and making sure your data resilience is not just accessing the data, you've got to make sure there's a system for it to be loaded on. Is that system available? Is it clean for the data to land? And can I connect to it and put that in place? How long will it take me to rebuild these systems from scratch, brand new, or if it's contaminated, it's been compromised? I need every variance to be able to test, because you will come across one of those variances when you've got to do this in real time. And you've got to make sure the people understand what their responsibilities and authorities are for the people actually performing this. You don't want people running around, because believe me or not, and from people I talk to, when you need to recover data, recover systems because of an exceptional event, not a standard event, an exceptional one, normally associated to a cyber incident, it's like chaos theory. Everyone is running around trying to meet everyone's requirements and not meeting them all at the same time. Somebody will say, I'm more important than somebody else. And the CISO, CIO, the heads of that operations and security have got to know that different people are doing their jobs. And by the way, when you're doing all of this, and it's one thing that I don't have on the list and should have, this should all be written down on a piece of paper. Because if you get hit, you don't have a digital system to read from. So, when I did business continuity and disaster recovery tests, back in the day, we used to have big folders. And the big folders we opened up and we went through each page, to do the test. And how do you do it? Who's responsible for it? Edward's smiling at this, but he knows when something goes wrong, it's all right having a backup policy, but if that backup policy is online, you don't have access to it. You've got to do it manually. And that also includes who you talk to, who you manage, because believe it or not, the first people that will walk into your business when you actually incur a cyber incident will be a lot of lawyers. They will walk in and tell you to stop doing everything you're doing until they can then start to control the environment. And I've had this with a prospect client of ours where their system got attacked, they got hit by ransomware, and the CISO wanted to bring the systems back and start it, and the lawyers told them, stop. I'm bringing in a brand new incident response team. This is the way you're going to manage it. I've got to deal with both the regulatory side and also ensure that your cyber insurance is being adhered to. You are doing the right things at the right time. This is not standard backup and recovery. This is what you will happen and what you will deal with. Again, effectiveness of processes and procedures. Whether you're doing NIST, whether you've got a zero trust environment, which is all around process procedures and design policies, those sort of things, you've got to test their effectiveness for and identify the gaps. You will have gaps. People will fall through them. That's why you test, and you test regularly. You do different parts of the system at different times that is in place. So, yeah, you're never going to be able to do the whole system at the same time, but you can do different parts of it and you can test it and make sure that it's done correctly. So you've got to make sure that everything that you're managing can be automated. And remember, automation can be both, from a physical viewpoint, everyone knows their jobs. They go off and do that. I automatically know in this instant, I have to do this. Not the technology will automate it, because the technology may not be available. And network connectivity, as we explained earlier, is the #1 barrier to success. If you don't have a network, you can't talk to anyone. And then you use tabletop exercises where you can. This is where cyber advisory people come in and help with you, because they've been through this experience with other organizations and can manage that. If you look at the environment that we had before, let's go back to the devil in the detail. And I picked up that effectiveness and efficiency of recovery process and procedures. That is what we want. NIST tell me that this architecture diagram will allow me to recover my environments if I use their processes and procedures. Let's start at the minimum. Information that we all deal with in our business is datum or data. Datum creates data that is there. I've got singular, I can turn it into multiple. When you look at unstructured data, it comes in kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, terabytes. Typically, you could find some unstructured files that are terabyte size, but it tends to fit into where the red dots are now fitting on the screen, into these areas that you could have it stored. Then we go to the alternative, which is structured, your databases, for instance. And those come in gigabytes and terabytes and will come in exabytes as well. There's a massive space project being undertaken at the moment worldwide, and they are downloading an exabyte of data a day into a file, and that's what they're going to work from, that you have in place. If you look at where all of these exist, they complement each other. So this is where datum creates data. But if you also think about datum, when I have a file, I can replicate it 8 times roughly on average during its life cycle. That means I either copy it because I want another copy, or I share it with somebody else. The standard average is about 8 times. So it's not just once. There is another 7 times of that primary data somewhere else. If you look at data, it can be filtered. So within the data, I can take extracts of that data. I can take portions of it and create new pieces of data. And that can be up to 10 times during its life cycle. If I have a database, I can do a thing called an ETL, an extract load. So I take part of the database out and I use an extract to test against. That's no longer part of the database that's active. That's a separate piece that developers got, and they may share it with somebody else. Hopefully they'll get rid of it after they finish. But that means that it multiplies. And it also means that you have to make sure you know where all the devices and location of the data is being used, so that you can ensure it's either available or excluded from backups. And the excluded from backups is key, because a lot of people will say, yeah, but it's just easier if I just buy another terabyte of storage and back it up, because I can rely on my backup database to recover the right data that I need. And that's a totally logical approach when you think you can get a terabyte on a little chip nowadays that you can put in. Obviously, it's not for enterprise use, but you think about it, when I used to sell storage many years ago, I used to sell it for the equivalent of £2 or $2.50 per megabyte. Today, you can get it for 0.0003 cents a megabyte. So it just shows, one, how old I am, but how Geoffrey Moore's law has actually impacted the ability to store data.
Kevin, I have someone asking the question, is it easier to recover structured data versus unstructured data irrespective of size? Because I think in this one, you're more looking at the contents, but you have a answer for that?
Yeah. My belief, and others may contest it, is structured data, first of all, will always be easier to recover because you are moving a stream of individual data. The issue there is the size of data that you're moving against unstructured data, where you're now moving multiple files. For instance, we have a client that's got a 2 terabyte cluster server, and they have 13 million individual unstructured files on it that they need to recover. In traditional terms, and I say traditional backup and recovery, you would have to identify all of those files to then make sure that you've got not only all the files, but also which recovery point objective you want to come from, and then move them through. Remember, as it's going through, there's a header and a footer for every single file, and it transmits it through. And when one's finished, it will start the other one through. When you're working on structured data, yes, you can identify, I want to bring this SQL SAP database back, and it will start to stream it. But again, you are bandwidth by network connectivity. You could probably have multiple channels working, but it's the size of the data. So easier with structured because you've got less resource intensiveness for managing it, but it will take longer than it is in traditional terms for unstructured data. That's in the current environment. And that's part of the issue that we've got, is that about, I would say, the majority of companies would know roughly 80 to 90% of where their data is. And from that 80 to 90% that they have actually is only 20% of their overall data. So when somebody says to me, how much data do I know? And they'll go, oh, I know all of my databases, and that covers at least 3/4 of my data farm. So great, so you know under 80%, yeah. How much of your unstructured data do you know? I don't. How much do you think it of the unstructured is a category of your overall data? Don't know, it can't be much. It is. It is over 80% of a company's data is unstructured. So the reality is you will probably know about 20% of your data. The other 80% is what a system like a backup product sweeps up and says, you have this, because you go around on devices and tell it to back it all up. So you're backing up things that in some cases you don't need to, but it's costing you money. And the key part within all of this is that there's no such thing as non-important data. Data is important to everyone. 20 years ago, we used to delete data. From 20 years ago, we now keep it all. We never get rid of it because there could be a use for it through big data, through artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. So we keep it all because we may find something. But the issue that comes to hand is what happens when real operational exceptional events occur. And an exceptional event is not when somebody needs their disk re-imaging, when they've lost data because they've made an error, or they need to put the next level of software onto their devices. This is where a device or data is compromised. Yeah. So if you look, you immediately be compromised on those devices. when on-site backups are compromised, attackers do not go after just file-based servers, PC data. They go to hurt you. And in almost all experiences that I've seen this year alone, they damaged the on-site backup as well. They also paralyze your Active Directory and domain name servers as well. Why? You can't do anything without an Active Directory system, so you can't get the data back because you've got nothing that's telling you who's authorized in the system. Your networks will be compromised either directly or indirectly. You can have a denial of service attack. You could end up with that just as a secondary attack in the system. But you will also, the first thing you will do when you get attacked is you will take down all of your networks. And you do it for one reason, probably two actually. The second one is the lawyer will tell you to take them down. But the first one is you are there to protect your environment, either from the malware spreading or from other malware getting into the system, i.e. a secondary attack. So you take them down. That's why you see websites going offline. That's why email systems don't work. Yeah, Saudi Aramco many years ago, that I went there after the Shamoon virus, you couldn't have got a carrier pigeon in there. They took everything down. Even the fax machine that they had wasn't available. You take it all down. Your backup database is compromised. That is a key thing for all systems. So tell me, if your backup database is compromised and you're relying on your backup database to tell you what files to recover, you now have nothing. So everything that is on that screen, I have seen and experienced, and I have CISOs in 3 companies that will tell you that happened to them. They are not, well, 2 of them are not massive companies. One is a government affiliate company. The other 2, one's a medium-sized, one is an enterprise. They hit all of their servers, they hit their workstations. The networks weren't affected on any of them, but they took their networks down to protect themselves. They lost Active Directory. They lost their backups, both the copies and the databases. They also compromised the VEEAM servers that were in place. And also, because you don't have access to the cloud service, you can't get anything back. That is reality of how an attacker will come against you in real worlds, not the way that NIST portrays that you should do backup and recovery systems.
Also, Kevin, we also have to remember too that when NIST came out, I mean, we have version 2 right now, is that some level of attacks on backups was very small. Now that is the main aim. The aim is to cause reputation damage to the business by releasing of data on your customers or any projects, etc. And number 2, that you are unable to recover, because if you think of yourself as a criminal and you want to guarantee that you are paid for your work, a business might say, okay, then we will take repercussions, we will suffer the fines and go through. But you can still recover, you can still go ahead. But the aim now is to really go after your backups and to also release information. So you have an operational issue where you got time to go back into production instead of taking maybe hours or maybe a day. Can be a matter of sometimes weeks, in some cases months. And then you also have to worry about the additional financial risks having to do with compliance risks, other financial risks, etc., that goes along with the release of private data on the dark web for fraud and etc.
Yeah, and if you take your points there, Edward, Ponemon Institute, which is a reputable institute, the average time to bring data back, just data, is 17 days. The average time to bring the systems back where you are running operationally, where everything is running as it should, is approximately 256 days. Yeah, that is what they have stated from their findings. So when people tell me, now I've been told I can get the data back in an hour, the systems can be up and running, all in place. That's not reality. That's somebody telling me that their product works. That's great, but do the TTPs work all together in both operational and exceptional incidents? And as I said, NIST is great for operational incidents that you will have, as Edward said, when people weren't targeting backups, when we didn't have the type of cyber environment we have today, but they
Correct.
don't consider the exceptional events that we have to deal with day in, day out, either as individuals, as employees, as business owners. So you need to do active scenario testing that reflect these environments, where how can you do real testing if you don't have a real understanding about your data? Go back to regulation and compliance. How can you tell your regulating body, this is the data I had stolen, if you don't know what was there to start with? And I mean everything at that point that was going on. How can you do active scenario testing if you don't have on-site backups, a backup database, Active Directory, DNS, no networks, no devices? You have to plan for these, and you work it on a step-by-step basis, to work out the different scenarios that you need to do. You don't do them all at once, but there is a recovery process that you need to be put into place to go and manage that. And that's why, from our side, we believe, you've got to change the way that you do this. Technology evolves and goes forwards, and things change in categories. As we explained right at the beginning, we have the RPO and RTO objectives people have based on the traditional recovery, clean and rebuild processes that you have in place. But those systems haven't evolved into the 24/7 digital active environment that we live in today. The lifespan of somebody's interest in your website used to be about 14 seconds. If you didn't get a response 14 seconds, it goes down. Now, today, it's about 4 seconds. If I don't get a response, I'm going to go and find an alternative. I might try to find a different way in to your system, but if I can't find it that way, I'm going to someone else's site to go and look at that. And we've got to manage this under those extreme environments. So if you look at the environments that we put in place as we have it today around the endpoint detection and response and such like, and the rebuild recover, let's turn that into reality of what happens. When you look at this, all of these areas, whether it's boundary, network, comms, endpoint areas, are there to stop bad things from happening to you. And they do a great job. They stop 99% of the attacks coming through. But the 1% they don't stop, that evades them, gets through. Now, if you as a company are experiencing, let's just say, 10,000 attacks per year, which is a really low number. An attack is an attack. It's not success. A cyber incident is success. If I'm stopping 99% of them, that means 1,000 or 1,000 of them will get through, or whatever it is, 100 of them will get through. So if you work on that basis, I've now got systems that are going to be compromised by those things that the malware engines in these products, whether they are basic, the most advanced AI, behavioral thinking systems, they have missed it. You then require data security and recovery to start to recover that data back that's either been compromised, it's either been deleted or encrypted, or it's been stolen. So I need to rebuild it. But things have changed. And what we're going to focus on is that data security and recovery piece. And, I'm going to highlight one company. As Edward said right at the beginning, I used to work for IDC looking after their security software. And I used to have companies come to me saying, I've got something new. And I think, yeah, I've heard about it all before. New Shield is new. It does exactly what it says on the tin, and it only does what it says it's going to do. And it protects your data when it's trying to be compromised. And by doing that, it means we can introduce a level of cyber resilience into your active environment. This is not admitting defeat. This is saying the malware has got through, and now I need something that's going to protect the data that is now being targeted. And if it attempts to attack my data, I can, what it's called, revert that data back to a specific recovery point objective in a recovery time objective that is insanely quick. And by insanely quick, when I said it takes 2.5 hours to recover a terabyte of data, traditional method, with New Shield, you recover a terabyte of data in 6 minutes. And that is 6 minutes for every terabyte. So if I have 10 devices and they've each got a terabyte on them, it does it in a sequence that says, I can do these all at the same time. It is not one after the other. So if it takes me 6 minutes for one, it takes me 6 minutes for all 10. And that is the way that technology should advance. It recognizes the issues that are in the environment today and says, we need something new. Believe it or not, these guys that built this used to live in the area on the left-hand side in cybersecurity. They used to build malware engines. And they said, we can't keep up with it. So we need to live in an area where if it gets through, we can protect that. But this doesn't mean you throw away your data recovery function. You still need backup and recovery. You still need it for device and disk failures, for disaster recovery and business continuity. But these are not time-sensitive functions. Everything on the left of the yellow line is time sensitive. Every minute that you are down is costing you money. If you're down for 7 days, for 14 days, for 17 days, it's going to cost you your business. And that's the thing that we address. And we're going to focus on this in the last part of this session, so that you fully understand that the RPO in this case is about the immediate last good known state. Again, think about it in the olden ways, which is full backups, incrementals, differentials. This technology can do the same thing. You can go back 30 versions of it. By the way, this is all happening on the device, not off-site, not anywhere outside of it. And that means the recovery time objective is now in minutes to hours, not days to weeks that you have in place. Protected data cannot be compromised. It can't be deleted. It can't be exfiltrated on databases. Databases cannot be manipulated illegally. You can't get into things like boot drive to compromise it or hard drive to go and wipe it. You know, this technology, these guys have built it in such a way that it is very, very, very secure. You know, these guys work with Microsoft hand in, hand out to do this. Yeah, an understanding of it. Think about your data on the left-hand side. Think about a whiteboard that you have in your office, and you've written your strategy on the whiteboard. And what you do is, because you don't want anyone to touch it, you put a piece of Perspex glass on that whiteboard. No one can wipe it because it won't affect it. And if they try to overwrite it, it doesn't affect what's behind it. And that Perspex glass is what's called an overlay. Yeah, the whiteboard itself is protected by this technology. And then it puts an overlay in place, the whiteboard. So when somebody updates your whiteboard, it goes on the overlay. It doesn't actually change what's behind it. And then over time, what happens is that the technology moves the data from the overlay to the protected file at the back. But when it does that, it validates and verifies that the data in the overlay is the same type of data and construct to what it's expecting at the back end. So if you imagine you're being attacked with encryption, then the encryption only hits the overlay, and it'll only encrypt anything that has not been committed to the back end, which could be a few kilobytes of data. But because it's not touched what's behind it, as far as the system's concerned, your data is still secure. And what the technology does to actually bring you back is it cleans the overlay, it deletes it. So this technology is the only thing that deletes to recover. And it's really simple. And by 6 minutes, I have a Windows machine. And when I provide all my demos, for instance, for it, I have about 2,500 files. I've got just under a terabyte of data. My system can recover back in about 55 seconds. I can do that. I can recover my own operating system with one click. So whether it's the OS, whether it's the data, it can all be managed because it's all independent of any centralized function. The central function is that the IT administrator will get alerted when there's suspicious file activity. They can then make sure that they can recover everyone's devices all at the same time, because you are not moving data through the network. You are not reliant on a backup. It all happens on the device. And no, it doesn't require double the amount of storage. It requires about 10% more than what you're using today, because it keeps just the changes. So this recovery really is fast, but the most important thing is you do not lose that data. In typical environments, if someone's attacked you, you will lose the data, and then you've got to rebuild it from scratch again. That's those points of losing the data incurs all of the issues that you've got to deal with privacy, compliance, data protection, let alone the reputational side of things. With this, you don't lose it. What you do is clean it, bring it back into position, and the data and the devices are sitting there waiting and ready for everything else to be brought back to where it is. Remember, your networks are down, you've been attacked, so you can bring them up and the devices are available straight away. A simple explanation of that is this is a standard file folder. NewShield puts this mirror shielding barrier around it. It's a proprietary technique. It's patented by NewShield. This isn't Snapshot or anything else. It's their own system. So when encryption happens, it thinks it's encrypted your files, and it hasn't. It's only affected the overlay. The same thing happens if it attempts to delete your files. It's only deleted the instruction to the overlay. The files are still active underneath. You won't see them anywhere, but NewShield can bring them back again, literally in the same speed that it does when it then removes that overlay and brings those files back again. And like I say, this sort of thing happens on standard files, on databases. It protects the operating systems as well. So it's respecting today's working environment. It's that ability for mobile usage. It's the centralized and decentralized environment that says things need to happen. I don't want to have to rely on the IT team if I've just inadvertently downloaded some malware onto my PC. It's not affected anyone else. I'm going to be getting on a plane. Well, I can reboot and recover my system, i.e. the operating system, and my data, while I'm sitting on the aeroplane. In fact, I could have a cup of coffee. By the time I finished it, everything's back. And it really does do what it says on the tin. And most people will say to me, it sounds better than what it probably is. And I say, no, I actually dumb it down because people don't think it will manage it. So when you look at it from the architecture diagram side, it will support everything on that bottom left-hand side. You don't need it for worm drives because worm drives cannot be affected. You know, ransomware can't get in and change that or delete it. But it also makes sure that whether you're in the corporate network environment, whether you are in a cloud environment where you have access to your servers and your backup servers, your data center is covered, and also those remote employees are covered as well, and the cloud services. You can put this on your backup copy database server to make sure you protect that. All of those environments are there. And like I say, it can run independent or centralized in the way that it manages things. So when you look at the systems, the key thing with NewShield is, yes, it doesn't cover every operating system, but it covers the one operating system who have a thing called Patch Tuesday. Why? Because they get hit with zero-day threats, the CVEs issued for them, so they attacked Microsoft first. Every version that Microsoft currently has is supported, whether that's a PC, whether that's a server. It will cover all of the cloud storage shares as well, because that's what we use today in our environments. From the data side, I can protect 512 gig, half a terabyte of a standard file, or 2 terabytes if it's on a 64-bit system. And technical people will know about this, and up to 64 terabyte clusters. Size is not the issue. And by the way, with NewShield, the number of files, that question came up before, it doesn't matter about the number of files. It's immaterial to NewShield. Whether you're recovering back actually 13 million files or 100 files, it'll actually bring back 13 million faster than 100. Weird one, but that's for another day. Databases, it does Microsoft SQL databases, but it's not just supporting that. It stops somebody from tampering with it, i.e. with the data files. You can't update it. You can't see it if you dial in from outside, so you can't steal the data, and you can recover the whole system. NewShield doesn't recover just the data, because when somebody attacks your database, they attack the server and will change some of the registries. So NewShield brings the whole system back to where it should be. And by I mean whole system, I am still talking about 6 minutes to bring that back. The residency that you have there, as I say, most people use it where it's on site, but as I said before, where a client is now got a mixture of on-site and cloud, and they have access to the cloud operating system for that server, NewShield can go on there and go and support all of those. And the key thing for all of this is, it doesn't matter if your networks are compromised, you can still bring your data back, because every device can run independently without communicating, because it doesn't rely on anything. It doesn't need any backups, but NewShield, as we have with a use case, is protecting the backup server as well as the database servers and things like the DNS and the Active Directory servers as well. And we put all of those in place. We have the last poll question that Edward's got for us. I think, there we are. And as I'm a strategy person. My job's to do evangelizing and stuff like this. So this is my CEO. One of the things that we do at Cybrilliance, and we have it with both the vendors that we operate with. You'll never find Cybrilliance with 20 odd products. We don't go for that. We go for the ones that make a difference. And the NewShield team, we work really closely with the CEO and the COO and everybody else that is in there. So it means that we can get changes made to the technology very quickly. we act as their sales and marketing arm, because this is a bunch of technical people that are really good at their jobs. And we said to them, we need to be able to allow people to test. And they said, great, let them do POCs for free. Doesn't cost no money. Create the documents. There's a whole set of documents for this that allows you to run a proof of concept in your environment, over your period of testing, that everyone helps with. And we actively ask people to do this testing next to what they do today. We want to show that by introducing something like NewShield, and I say something like NewShield, there isn't any other product that does what NewShield does. And I've looked, as a, I would say, a very diligent analyst, I've looked at everything else. There isn't anything that does what NewShield does that is its own technology, changes the way that people deal with things, and allows you to put it side by side. And one of the key things that we have with this is that ability and speed of recovery, and making sure that you can manage that environment. So we had the questions up there. I won't wait for those. Does anybody have any additional questions and answers they'd like to put over before we finish? Edward, I'll hand over to you.
Yes, Kevin. I just wanted to highlight that the POCs, and you can confirm that the POCs are free. We give you a chance to review NewShield within your test environment and see how it works for you. There are many applications out there that allows you to infect, damage, etc., your files or what you have, and you can see how quick it is to replace it and look at the enterprise version, having an overhead view of your recovery infrastructure. So I think the POC, is free. There's nothing to bother about. You can, the greatest thing you can learn, and if it works for you, it's something that you can look at in the very near future. Ransomware is on the increase, cyber attacks on the increase. They are going after your backup files. So all of these, I like to call it like an onion. This is something that my boss once said to me way back. And when I was describing defense in that, he said, it's like an onion. I'm like, yes, we all see that word, but for us security persons, we think in more in technical terms. The idea is to have that onion of protection within your environment. When you reach to this point, it means that all of your defenses that you would have put in place from the security email gateway, like what we offer from TrustWave, to the next generation firewall, it could be like Palo Alto, etc., to your EDR, XDR solution, etc. Whatever the process is, when you get to this point, it means then that all of those layers of the onions have been compromised. And that person is now, that cyber criminal is now on that machine, is now in your infrastructure. They're performing lateral movement. They're literally in your infrastructure, and they're now carrying out operations. So let us say be part of your last defense. Tomorrow you're going to be looking at, in the event of an exfiltration, you did not have like NewShield, etc., protecting your customer privacy, protecting your data, etc. Okay. All right. So again, I'd like to thank. Are there any questions that anyone may have by any chance? Okay. Well, I would like to thank Kevin very much for being able to come online today and highlight this step that it is, let me say, it's very worrying. If one can just take a look at some of the postings, like what we do post on LinkedIn, or just type in breach companies or the latest cybersecurity attacks, you will continue to see that there are many breaches. There are many companies that are going offline from small up to enterprise every single day in this world. Attack does not discriminate wherever part of the world you are. So the idea is to make sure that you're ready and to be prepared. So thank you very much, Kevin. I greatly appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Edward. Thank you very much, everyone, as well.